Welcome into Pac-12 review. I am Michael Caratanito. Yes, at Diablo00 here on Sideline Sports. And yes, the Pac-12 Bulls kicked off for the Pac-12, and they are 1-1. Oregon State. Jonathan Smith, the Oregon State alum, showing why he got that extension as head coach. And they beat down Florida. Washington State, not so much. Oregon State beat down Florida in the SRS distribution Las Vegas Bowl, and Washington State, yeah, not so good for them. Fresno State smacked them in the Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl. So 1-1 so far for the Pac-12 as they get rolling. And yeah, bowl season is here. Holiday season is here. We are 6 days away from Christmas. Happy Hanukkah out there to all those that obviously celebrate Hanukkah as well. But yeah, holiday season in full swing, and weather's been chilly in most parts of the country. Actually getting a little chilly here in Arizona too, which big fan of. Yes, right here. Big fan of. With the cooler weather. But yes, no, I mean, it's so far bowl schedule or with bowl season here, we've had a few interesting ones too outside of the Pac-12. Just real quick, in the Duluth Trading Cure Bowl, Troy beat UTSA 18-12. That had a very crazy ending to it. UAB, that another game that also had an insane ending to it in the Bahamas Bowl, the hometown leaders Bahamas Bowl. UAB beat Miami of Ohio 24-20. I mentioned Oregon State, obviously. We'll get to that in a minute. They beat Florida. Louisville beat Cincinnati handily in the Wasabi Fenway Bowl, 24-7. We'll get to Fresno State and Washington State. Fresno State won that game. Southern Miss beat Rice in the Lending Tree Bowl, 38-24. BYU eked out a victory in the New Mexico Bowl over SMU, 24-23. Another crazy ending to a game. Boise State held on to beat North Texas 35-32 in the Frisco Bowl, presented by Serve Pro. And so those are all the games. And then some bowl games coming up too. Obviously, we have Pac-12 bowl games, but no bowl games today. Tomorrow, though, we do have the famous Idaho Potato Bowl. Yes, Idaho potatoes are very famous. San Jose State will be taking on Eastern Michigan in that game tomorrow. And then also tomorrow, we have the roofclaim.com Boca Raton Bowl as Liberty takes on Toledo. And sorry about that. And then so that's tomorrow. Wednesday, we have Western Kentucky taking on South Alabama in the R&L Carriers New Orleans Bowl. Thursday, we have the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl between Air Force and Baylor. And then Friday on the 23rd, Friday on the 23rd, we have the Radiance Technologies Independence Bowl as Houston is taking on the Ragin' Cajuns of Louisiana. And also on Friday, the Union Home Mortgage Gasparilla Bowl, Missouri taking on Wake Forest. So that is up until Friday, back on Friday, and talk about other bowls coming up as well. But that is where we are at bowl wise in games coming up and games so far. And again, bowl season. Again, I know I said Friday that, and I said last Monday too. I mean, pseudo exhibition games if you're not playing in the college football playoff. But inevitably, teams still want to get wins. So yeah, I don't talk out of. I aim not to talk out of both sides of the mouth because it's one of those things where when certain teams and conferences, if they win, oh, of course they, oh, look at our record, we're the best. But if they lose, oh, well, they didn't care, or blah blah blah. They definitely care, and the way you see some of these games again, the back and forth, the battle. I mean that UAB Miami of Ohio game, the Bahamas Bowl, literally Miami of Ohio stopped on the UAB 2-yard line, 2 yards away from winning the game, and UAB gets the last second win. So it was very entertaining bowl. But yes, it inevitably it goes on your record, so you can't say it's an exhibition game because a lot of teams, oh, they get that 9th win, they get that 10th win. So it's and again, you'll see some players not playing. We talked about it, both sides, guys that are going to go to the NFL and figuring, hey, why would I play in a game that? But I know I saw for Alabama that Bryce Young is playing in their bowl game, as is their big time defender, ranked very high on, of course, early draft boards. And no, we're not doing a mock draft 1.0 yet, or but yeah, both of them are playing. So it's personal choice, but you can understand why, for not playing for a national title, why guys would sit out. So right, wrong, or indifferent, they're still getting drafted because NFL teams, they're not gonna. I heard the dialogue for a while in the beginning that, they're not there for their team, so they wouldn't get drafted. People try to push that dialogue, which absolutely made me laugh, because if they're in college and trying to get to the pro level, and not trying to, they are going to get there. They are going to be drafted high. Yeah. If you're going to skip over them for not playing in a bowl game, that, yeah, after all they've put on tape and what they've done, and having been evaluated, and you see it, scouts doing it. So yes, that dialogue, that one was very funny to me. I for a second I was like, oh, I could never see that. I thought I could, but I'm like, yeah, not so much. But yeah, so those are the bowl games coming up, and again, the Pac-12, their next bowl game not till December 28th, when the San Diego County Credit Union Holiday Bowl in San Diego, beautiful venue, and I've had a lot of fun at these at the Holiday Bowl a few times I've been there. So nonetheless, but Oregon will be taking on North Carolina, but we have time to get to that. And then also Washington taking on Texas in the Alamo Bowl on the 29th. And then the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl, UCLA taking on Pittsburgh on the 30th. And then Monday, January 2nd, 2 Pac-12 teams in action. The Goodyear Cotton Bowl, USC taking on Tulane, and Utah taking on Penn State in the granddaddy of them all, the Rose Bowl, presented by Prudential. So yes, those are the upcoming Pac-12 games. But like I said, not until next week will we see team in action when the Holiday Bowl takes place, Oregon and North Carolina. But yeah, bowl season, I don't know. Holiday season's here. I've always enjoyed it. I know I said this before they started. I love bowl season. Uh, for the teams, I mean, the younger players, obviously the freshmen that come in, or that come in that obviously are on the team and might be redshirted, but still those extra 10 to 12 to 15 practices you might get, and it's more, to overstate the obvious, it's more reps. But that being said, you catapult that, then you play in your bowl game, and then you go into spring ball. So yeah, there's that downtime, but it's also those extra practices, and then that a smaller break. It just kind of catapults you into spring ball. And now those freshmen that are coming back, that are going to be sophomores, and even for your sophomores going to be juniors, just those extra reps and putting your offense in, and then installing obviously some new stuff. But it's so much helps. And you always hear coaches talk about that, and you're like, oh, another, coach talk cliche, the extra practices, but it's true. It's especially for those younger guys. It is great to see what the to see obviously new installs, but it's great for the team because you just that the repetition of running offense, running defense, whatever side of the ball you're playing, and it's just getting you that much more comfortable, more ready to step in and play. Obviously, why the coaches recruited you, why you're there. So it's that part of it, that aspect of it, I always love, because I just think it definitely catapults you into spring ball. And I think you can get a lot more accomplished in spring ball than if you're not in a bowl game and not getting those extra practices. And I know people have said, well, you've done it all year, but yeah, you're getting ready for teams with bowls. Yes, you're getting ready for a team, but you can still do more stuff. And like, whether it's, putting in some new plays or fine tuning just something, say offensively with, a play, and, mistakes made blocking on a play, or somebody going to the wrong spot. It's just getting those repetitions, getting those 12 to 15 extra practices. And I mean, you think about the college football playoff, if you're playing in that, yes, I mean, you still have to go by the guidelines of, how many hours within the week you're able to practice. But I mean, still, that's 3 weeks more of practice for the semifinals, for the two teams that win. And yes, you're getting ready for that other team, you're putting it in, but it's still at least 7, 8 more practices. So you figure you get about 25 extra practices if you're playing for a national title. For those younger players, again, that's why, and as much as it frustrates people no matter what conference, that's why a lot of those teams are favored coming in to the next season, due to the fact that, well, man, you finished after the new year. Yes, it was a long season, but with what you have coming back, young guys that got playing time, that got experience, then you go into spring ball, and it's like, oh yeah, this is still very fresh in our memory. And again, you tweak some stuff, like I said, offensively, add some new plays, schematically, maybe add a few things on defense, but you can do it in spring ball with really having to not start at, block one, because of all the extra practices you just had, whether you're coming off winning a national title, playing in the game, even playing in the semifinals. Like I said, getting those practices, it is absolutely huge. And I will always stand by that for the development of young players and what it means to them coming back the next season. So, and even teams that play later in bowl season as well, too. Like I said, if you're getting anywhere from 10 to 10, okay. But if you're getting 15 to 20 extra practices, Utah, USC, both playing on January 2nd. So it's huge. Like I said, Oregon playing on the 28th, UCLA playing on the 29th. Those teams that, you're getting those extra practices and leading into spring ball. To me, that's the catapult. What more can you accomplish in spring ball? Yeah, and you're going to take it. You can take it a little bit slower again because you're not getting ready for obviously playing anybody that next weekend or that next week. But into spring ball, there's a lot of things you can do. So again, big proponent of getting to a bowl game, getting to one that's later in the month as well, or obviously into the college football playoff. So that'll be very very, that's, to me, that's always, again, you see teams that do that. So what does it do for, again, what Utah's built, USC, Chip Kelly and UCLA being pretty much ranked the whole season? Washington as well, Oregon, what Dan Lanning did up there, and Kalen DeBoer at Washington. So it's huge. It's absolutely huge. So a big fan of that. But I know I said, so again, Oregon State beat Florida in the SRS Distribution Las Vegas Bowl. They absolutely rolled them 30-3, almost shut Florida out. And Florida still has the longest active streak in college football without being shut out. It's like over 400 some odd games. But 30-3, Oregon State absolutely dominated defensively and and offensively. They did what they moved the ball, did what they wanted to do, and Florida gets smacked down. So Pac-12 smacking down an SEC school, which is always beautiful to see. And Fresno State well, for Washington State, they had a tough one. It was 29-6, Fresno State. The Bulldogs, and well, a man that's familiar with the Pac-12, Jeff Tedford, the head coach of Fresno State, they beat down Washington State 29-6. And man, it was 16-0 at halftime. It was 22-6 at the end of 3. And then Washington State only scored in that third quarter, 6 points. So we'll get to that. And that was a Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl, which was presented by Stifel. Jimmy Kimmel actually in the booth with the guys for a while, Joe Tessitore and Greg McElroy. And in the booth with the guys for a while. So that was pretty entertaining. Tessitore let him call a play, showing him the the boards, the spotter boards. So that was and Guillermo made an appearance in the booth too. So it was but the LA Bowl again at SoFi Stadium. Again, just a great bowl game, but not for Washington State. Fresno State getting the job done there. And it was, I'm not going to say shocking, because Fresno State, again, their schedule in and of itself, is, how do I say that? Fresno State's schedule in and of itself is, it has always been, especially out of conference, very challenging. So I don't, I don't, it's a little what Fresno State does again, that Washington State lost to. And Washington State, struggled in the second half pretty much. I'm not going to say all season, but a good portion of the season. We talked about this. Washington State just in the second half, not the same team they were in the first half. So if they got out to a lead, it was like, could they hold on? Could they do enough? Could they get, and again, not that they didn't, I'm not saying they didn't score points in the second half, but their scoring total definitely down from first half to second half. And we saw that, talked about that all season long. So, it's one of those things where it's for Washington State, it kind of held true. I mean, 6 points in the third quarter, but getting shut out in the first half and then in the fourth quarter. And it's one of those things where Fresno State, and when you look at it for the Bulldogs, I mean, gave them their 10th win of the season. So you finished 10-4. And I mean, they have losses to USC and Oregon State. And Oregon State, who, again, I talked about it earlier. I mean, last week they were 6 points away from being 11-1. I mean, Beavers are literally 6 points away from being 11-1. And it's and it'll be interesting to see what they do as well. Again, transfer portal wise, quarterback wise. I mean, Branson, I thought, got better and better as the season went on. The more comfortable he got with the playbook, the more they gave to him. Yes, they could run the ball, but so we'll see what happens there. But yeah, for Fresno State, again, Coach Tedford, 10-4. The Cougs finished the season 7-6. So I do want to get to this because I know I mentioned it on Friday and kind of got off on tangent, but hey, that's okay. We do that here on Pac-12 review and preview. It happens. But the California Board of Regents finally gives the approval to UCLA to join the Big Ten. And the Big Ten Conference, obviously, they put out a statement that says the Big Ten Conference is grateful to the University of California Board of Regents for respecting the decision of the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, to join our conference in 2024, said Big Ten Commissioner in a statement. It said the landscape of collegiate athletics is evolving, and the Big Ten Conference is in a position of stability and strength with unmatched opportunities, exposure, and resources for our member institutions and student athletes, with the collective goals to prioritize the health and well-being of our student athletes and forward our academic and athletic mission under the umbrella of higher education. We will continue our methodical integration process of UCLA and USC into the Big Ten Conference. Look, it benefits the Big Ten hugely getting into the LA market. How it benefits USC and UCLA, to me, yet to be determined. I know financially, because UCLA, and I talked about this, mentioned it briefly, how UCLA has been in financially, they're just in an insane amount of debt athletically. And USC didn't cry wolf on that one, but I'm not saying that there's not debt. I'm not sitting here obviously saying, yes, the money grows on trees, this and that, the TV deal. USC and UCLA were whining from the beginning that they deserve more money because, they're in the LA market and the schools when they come there and play and blah, 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 and that. I'm not saying, yes, it doesn't pose an advantage. Yes, they are in the number 2 market in the country and being in Los Angeles. But as a whole conference, no, you don't just get to sit there and say, you deserve. I mean, well, you can. I'm not saying you can't. You can definitely say, this is the percentage you should get compared to everybody else. No, the other presidents, it would be obviously it would be they would be done with their jobs if they sat there and they said, okay, we'll just give you all this so you stay, to kowtow to them. And look, I don't think, and you're going to talk about debt. Okay, well, USC and UCLA, when you're traveling, like 3,500, 3,700 miles for a conference game against, I don't know, Penn State, Rutgers, Maryland, like 3,700 miles for a conference game. And with Olympic sports, they said they're going to work out some stuff. So now you have to have what, you're going to have a volleyball matchup between, say, UCLA and Penn State at Nebraska? I mean, how fair is that to those players and those teams for a home game? Like, no, you want to be in the conference, the Big Ten. Oh, we have all this money to spend. Well, Big Ten, you're going to pick up you make sure you're picking up our travel both ways, obviously. Well, it goes both ways for, when Rutgers and Maryland and Penn State are coming out to USC and UCLA. Now, granted, for basketball, it's you look at it, it's something easy. And for sports that, that they all have the same of, it's easy because you can say, oh, okay, you're going to go out there, you're going to play them, and then you're going to play USC, then you're going to play UCLA or UCLA, USC, whatever. That makes it easy for like Rutgers coming out. But for, say, USC and UCLA, well, you're going to say for volleyball, you're going to Maryland, and then you're gonna have to schedule. So say Maryland and Rutgers are away games that year. So, you're gonna play Maryland, and then you're gonna go down and play Rutgers. Okay, like it's a little bit longer of a road trip, but okay, so you're gonna play Maryland on Thursday, and then Rutgers on Saturday or Sunday, whatever it is, volleyball wise. So yeah, I don't think teams should have to be penalized. And of course, people say, oh, well, I mean, everyone else, a lot of people are going to talk about is, oh, well, football and, basketball, like I said, is easy because USC, UCLA, I mean, if they're on the road, like, if you're playing Indiana and Purdue. So yeah, they're both going to go to, obviously, the great state of Indiana, and and they'll be there, but are they gonna, and when you see, like, obviously the distance between those schools, it's not like they're gonna, be on the same flights, and maybe it's flights, and then, bus from the airport to where you're playing, bus over to the other arena the next day, and then you have another game the next day. So I just think that again, when we see the money side, and yes, the football going to 12, I thought maybe that might change it. I thought the California Board of Regents also would kind of maybe stick it to UCLA, because UCLA just decided to talk about this behind closed doors with the Big Ten, with USC, and go forward from there. So I thought the California, I mean, and they did all the political touting, and it looked like they made it look like maybe it won't get it. Maybe they won't approve it. They won't approve UCLA going to the Big Ten. But again, if you follow the money, at least my boy Eric Wilson, we'll see you tonight on the Sports Arena. Other shameless plug, Sports Arena tonight on the Sideline Sports Network, 10 o'clock Eastern time. You can join us. But we just have, I mean, follow the money. And yes, I'm not with more schools when you have a broadcast deal, and the Big Ten already signed it. But Michigan and Ohio State, I got to tell you right now, aren't taking less of a cut, aren't giving more to USC and UCLA. Ain't happening. So you might be getting some, you're getting a bigger piece of the pie, but tell me that travel makes sense. 3,700 miles for a conference game is just ridiculous. Ridiculous. I mean, USC and UCLA flying up to, up to Seattle, or even up to Pullman, to Washington State, or, Oregon State too. Yeah, that's a little bit of a jaunt. But when you're literally flying all the way across the country for a conference game, and everybody's not playing everybody. So yeah, I don't think that, I think that's how you get out of playing Rutgers and Maryland and Penn State every year. But the Big Ten championship game, they're not playing that in LA for you guys. If you honestly think, whatever they said, going back and forth. It's going to be in Indianapolis. Indianapolis isn't losing the Big Ten championship game. They're not going to come out and play it in your backyard. Not going to happen. Maybe you could talk them into Jerry World in Dallas if Jerry, I mean, again, they're paying for it. So Jerry would be like, they'd figure it out. Maybe you could talk him going a little bit south to Dallas if you were in it, but Indianapolis isn't giving that up, and nor should they. So I want it to be worse for SC and UCLA in it. And no, I'm not a petulant child, I'm not being a petulant child, but I just, again, this college football and the dominoes of conference jumping and not going to 12 teams right away ruined regional rivalries. And yes, am I going to sit there and pout and not watch college football anymore? No, absolutely not. I really hope no more from the Pac join the Big Ten. It's ridiculous. And if it defeats the purpose of having conferences, it defeats the purpose of, okay, so if we form two super conferences, we haven't even gotten to obviously Oklahoma and Texas going to the SEC, which again helps out the top part of the teams that are going to be able to recruit. The bottom half of the conference still terrible. Yeah, I said it. SEC fans, you see me on Twitter. Believe me, I got the numbers. So there is no best conference due to the fact that the bottom teams make it absolutely brutal for the rest. And like I said, you can find me on Twitter at Diablo00. But yeah, if you would have went to 12 out of the instead of the 2 from the BCS, if you would have went to 12 from there and actually had vision presidents and NCAA and college football in and of itself, and the NCAA, even though, yes, they don't control it like they control the NCAA tournament. But that being said, if you would have went from 2 to 12, and I'll say this, I'll sound like a broken record, I'm fine with this one, you would have stopped the conference jumping because teams would have gotten in, and the money from getting in, yes, it gets bigger as you go on. If you host a home game, say the first game is, the team that's the lower seed obviously hosts the game. So you get an extra home game. It's, yes, the revenue would be whatever the split is because it is a playoff. It is part of the playoffs. If you went from 2 to 12 then, which I did say back then, no, I did not have the show, but I did say it back then, go to 12. Go to 12. First one's at home. Because then you could, yeah, you go to 12 and the top 4 and the top 4 get buys, because then it would be 8-4 and then back to 8-4-2. And so the first 2 rounds, the lower seed would get a home game. The top 4 wouldn't have, this is how I said it. So you have 12 teams, right? And obviously you can't go, it'd be, 12, 6, and then there's only 3 teams left. So 12, the top 4 get a bye. Whoever the top 4 are, they don't play. And then, so you have the other 8 teams. It goes to 4. So with the winners with that is 4. Then obviously the other 4 come in. You're back to 8, 4, and then you're 2. So yeah, the first games, the lower seeds host. Then in the second round, when those 4 come in, those top 4 seeds, they host. And then when you go to 4, then you incorporate bowl games. And there's other bowl games still going on in that time for teams that didn't qualify for the playoff. There you go. Could have did it then. The money would have been there. And they were just in such a rush to get a playoff that you're like, oh, 4-4. Well, if there's Power 5, which means there's 5 conferences, right? Right? If there's 5, One conference is missing out. No matter what. Even when certain conferences get to and they don't deserve to. I'm sorry, because of what they said in the beginning, and then they just kind of changed the line. Changed the line. But it would have stopped this. So now you see UCLA and USC going to the Big Ten. Fine, good riddance. Go. Ruin regional rivalries. You saw SC this year. They don't. I mean, yes, Lincoln Riley comes in and Caleb Williams, Heisman Trophy winner. I talked about it Monday. Congrats to him. Very, very well deserved. Very, very well deserved with the season he had. I know Blake Corum and Zach Charbonnet have other thoughts in mind, but once again, yes, no, but for Caleb Williams, but USC proved like they're right there. Now, had that been their first loss, if they beat Utah the first time, I know coulda, shoulda, woulda, if they'd probably still be in the college football playoff. Because if you're going to penalize them for a loss in a championship game, and I heard this, and I'll get to the review of the game in a second, but I'll wrap this up. I heard this in the broadcast of the Oregon State, Florida, Las Vegas Bowl, and Herbstreit was talking about, with the college football playoff at Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan, they had the two big runs. If you look at the blocking on those plays, guys were they were in the right position. They got blown out, and they were two big runs. And even in the first half, Ohio State couldn't pull away or anything, and Michigan's lines were beating them up. So Ohio State, and I'll get to that later, but I didn't, spoiler alert, I already said Georgia's going to beat them, but I'll get into details of how bad. A, I think it's going to be. B, I hope it is, because Ohio State has no business there again. Kind of like they had no business when Penn State won the Big Ten and they played Clemson and couldn't even score. Remember that? That was such a great semifinal. Such a great semifinal. Clemson would have beat Penn State. Penn State actually would have scored, though, because Penn State, we saw what they did that year in the Rose Bowl against SC. But I digress. If Herbstreit was talking about that, but for USC, I think had they beat Utah the first time and lost them in the championship game, they'd still be in the playoff. But if you went to 12 teams, you stop conference jumping. That's just me. But the Board of Regents finally approved UCLA to go. Yes, they did their political grandstanding to act like they wouldn't, but I just think that you don't want to. And if would UCLA, even though they have no money, I'm sure the Big Ten would have funded it. Would have they sued the Board of Regents if the Board of Regents didn't approve it? I'm sure the PAC would have been like, "Oh, you can come back here, but this is," and they're not going to get less. Obviously, you're not going to play that game, but nonetheless, they approved it. So USC, UCLA headed to the Big Ten in 2024. So next year, as talented as USC is and as good as UCLA was, I hope everybody else absolutely punches them in the face in the conference. That'll be very entertaining. So we're going to step aside real quick, and when we get back, I will break down the awesome Oregon State win over Florida. That's right, SEC, you got smacked. So I know. There I am on Twitter. Let me get your lame excuses as to, you didn't really want to be there. Well, then why'd you win a sixth game? That being said, we'll step aside real quick, and I'll get to that game after these messages. All right, back here on Pac-12 Review. I am Michael Caratanito, yes, at Diablo00 here on Sideline Sports. Shout out to everybody at Sideline Sports. Again, check us out later tonight. I'll be on the Sports Arena as we're going to talk crazy NFL football, phenomenal World Cup final. What I know. A lot of people aren't thrilled about penalty kicks, but what an insane game. We'll get to that. 10 o'clock Eastern here on the Sideline Sports Network, the Sports Arena. Our guy Eric Wilson, Ray Lynn, John Shear, and return of the Big Guard. If you want to see who the Big Guard is, you got to join us at 10 o'clock Eastern. But back here on Pac-12 Review, and yes, let's get to that awesome game. Oregon State in the SRS Distribution Las Vegas Bowl. Well, that was a dominant game this weekend. The Raiders and the I laugh because the Patriots, the way that game ended, absolutely epic. We'll talk about that on the Sports Arena tonight. But if you haven't seen it by now, just go YouTube the ending of the Raiders and the Patriots game and how the Raiders won. Absolutely maddening and insane. So shout out there. But nonetheless, the Beavers crushed the Gators 30-3 in that game. It was a 10-0 halftime lead for Oregon State. Then it was 23-0. It was 30-0, and Florida kicked a late field goal so they could extend their streak of over 400 games of not being shut out. But Oregon State just absolutely blasted them. I like what Jonathan Smith did. Tristan Gebbia, senior quarter, he's a senior, got some run in the game. He was 5 for 6 for 24 yards on the day, but all he's done. So Jonathan Smith, who former quarterback at Oregon State, and now the head coach, got his new extension. But Tristan Gebbia played, but Bengal Branson was in, out, and then back in, rotating them. But 12 for 19, 165 yards, threw a touchdown pass. And that touchdown pass was to Silas Bolden, who had 6 catches. I mean, it's phenomenal days for 99 yards, but just couldn't get that one more yard for the century mark. But yeah, Silas Bolden, 6 catches, 99 yards, and the touchdown rushing wise, Deshaun Fenwick, it was his day, 21 carries, 107 yards. Jam Griffin, who a young man who throughout the season was one of their leading rushers, only had 2 carries for 12 yards. You need to see the stiff arm that he threw for his touchdown run, because he had 1 rushing touchdown. Tyjon Lindsey had the other rushing touchdown. But Jam Griffin's stiff arm of an SEC defender, is absolutely awesome. But look, hats off to Oregon State. I mean, they threw for, like I said, a total 189. They rushed for 164. They had 4 sacks, 11 tackles for losses. And it's a team that, they've been patient with Jonathan Smith. They showed that, saying, Oregon State with, being up in Corvallis, a little more patient. But, man, it started out rough, but now they finished the season 10-3, and again, just rolling into next season. And the quarterback question, I posed it earlier. I said I'd get to it, but with the way Bengal Branson played, do I think this young man can keep leading this team? And with this thing, I mean, he's 6'3", 212 pounds, and so he's again, and he's he's a freshman, so. The growth, we'll see what happens. For depth, it'll be really interesting to me see Jonathan Smith being a former quarterback, what they can do, what he'll do with Gulbranson. But both, what he did, obviously Chance Nolan going down, and obviously he's hitting the portal. But Bengal Branson, it'll be very interesting to see. But 12 for 19, very efficient, 165 yards, the touchdown pass. And like I said, Tristan Gebbia was in, being a senior, what he meant. It was very, very cool to see that. Jonathan Smith doing that for Florida. Jack Miller III ended up starting at quarterback while playing. He was 13 for 22, 180 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. They only rushed for 39 yards. That was this defense for Oregon State. Like I said, they came to play. They wanted to win, and they smacked an SEC team. So SEC fans, when you say you don't care, don't start bragging about other victories you get in bowl games, because I don't want to hear it. Florida got smacked by Oregon State, who was the much better team, hands down, the much better team. So, yeah, but I mean, hats off to the Beavers again, a 10-3 season. Like I said, and I'll say it again, last time, broken record, but 6 points away, 3-point loss to USC, and then a 3-point loss to Washington. Those switch up. This is an Oregon State team that, to me, literally makes the college football playoff at 11-1, because they're playing in the championship game against Utah, and that was their one loss. So if they avenge that, I know there's quite a few ifs, but the biggest one being the Pac-12 championship game, but they would have been right there for that. So again, hats off to Jonathan Smith and the Beavers representing the Conference of Champions very, very well. Washington State, again, they represented well too, but Fresno State, Jeff Tedford, like I said, the better team in the Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl presented by Stifel, 29-6. Washington State only scored in the third quarter. Jake Haener, I talked about him on Friday, and Haener, 24-36, 280 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Jordan Mims. Oh, yeah, by the way, I said Mims with the season he had rushing. Yeah, 18 carries for 209 yards, 11.6 per touch. Let that sink in. Yeah. Oh, and 2 touchdowns. He had both their rushing touchdowns. His long in the day was 48. Nico Remigio had 5 catches for 84 yards for the Bulldogs, and Zane Pope 4 for 62. Both of them, Remigio and Pope, both had a receiving touchdown, but yeah, threw for 280. They averaged 11.7 per reception. And on the other side for Washington State, Cam Ward, 22-32. Not a bad day. Only 137 yards, so no touchdowns, 1 interception. Nakia Watson, man, they were trying to feed that young man the ball. He's been their go-to guy. 14 carries for only 33 yards. He did have the 1 rushing touchdown for the Cougars. But yeah, I mean, defensively, you look, Fresno State, they had 6 sacks and 9 tackles for losses. On the other side, the Cougs defense, I mean, 4 sacks, 6 tackles for losses, not a bad day, but just couldn't get much going offensively. Again, rushing, throwing for 137, only rushing for 45 yards. The sacks go into that. Cameron Ward, 11 carries for -4 yards. So, although his long rush was 11 yards. So, yeah, so 11 carries, -4 yards. But, I mean, when you only rush for 45 yards on the day, that's, yeah, and become one-dimensional, you're not going crazy through the air. It's a very tough day. I mean, under 200 total yards on the day for the Cougars. But Jeff Tedford and Fresno State, like I said, their schedule, real quick, their schedule this season, I mean, yeah, they lost to Oregon State 35-32. They lost. The USC was tough. I mean, 45-17. They ended up losing to UConn and then Boise State. Then they rattled off 9 in a row. They beat San Jose State, then New Mexico, then San Diego, Hawaii, UNLV, Nevada, Wyoming, and Boise State, and make it 10 in a row because they beat Washington State in their bowl game. So, you know, for the Cougs, it was a little more up and down. They started out 3-0, beating Idaho, getting that huge win at Camp Randall, beating Wisconsin 17-14. Then they beat Colorado State. They lost to Oregon 44-41. Turned around and beat Cal 20-9. Then they lost 3 in a row to SC, Oregon State, and Utah. But I mean, SC 30-14, Oregon State 24-10, but Utah 21-17. I mean, and yes, there was no Cam Rising in that game. And again, a few other players missing, and then they beat Stanford, beat ASU, beat Arizona, lost to Washington in the Apple Cup, and then lost their bowl game. So just need to find a little more consistency in the second half. I'm not even going to say find more offense, but consistency in the second half. Second half offense, I think, will be definitely the theme for Coach Dickert and the Cougs in the offseason. So the Pac-12, 1-1 so far in bowl play. But, yeah, I mean, no, consistency, offensive consistency throughout the game. And, yeah, you can say, oh, well, that's easy, very cliche, very, very big point there, Michael. No, but if you saw Washington State all year, the first half, very good. The second half, again, not every game, but there were games, I mean, they got out to a lead and when they beat ASU, but in the second half, ASU was coming back and inevitably ran out of time. But in the second half, their offense just not doing much. And that happened quite a few times this season. So I know they're definitely gonna look at that. But I think Cameron Ward had a solid season for the Cougars, as 23 touchdowns to he did throw 9 interceptions, but threw for 3,231 yards. And for the sophomore, so the bigger steps he takes, but it's just, again, it's that consistency in the offensive consistency in the second half. Yes, you don't not want it in the first, constantly get shut out in the first half and try and charge back in the second half. It's just things that they would need to fix, because Washington State to me is a team that's also right there in the pack. Oregon State definitely a little bit ahead. I mean, yes, Oregon and SC and Washington, what Kalen DeBoer did in his first season, and they're obviously playing in a bowl game later on, like I mentioned. But yeah, it was an interesting season for the Cougs. I mean, again, looking at the Pac-12 standings, they finished 7th, and they were 4-5 in conference play. And finished 7-6 overall now. But yeah, I mean, USC finished conference play at 8-1. Washington and Oregon and Utah all 7-2. Oregon State and UCLA 6-3. Washington State, the Cougs, like I mentioned, 4-5. The Wildcats 3-6. Both the Golden Bears and the Sun Devils 2-7. Stanford and Colorado 1-8. So, when you look at the final Pac-12 standings, Colorado, obviously, Deion Sanders, the new head coach there. Kenny Dillingham gets hired at Arizona State. So, what is it? Justin Wilcox. Is Justin Wilcox the longest tenured coach in the Pac-12? It's on Colorado. Stanford got a new Colorado new coach. Stanford new coach. ASU new coach. Not Cal. Arizona, well, Coach Fish is in his second season. Coach Dickert, yeah, no. And then Chip Kelly, this was his 5th season. John, oh, you know what? Kyle Whittingham. I'm a fool. Utah. Kyle Whittingham's the longest tenured coach in the Pac-12. See, I'm like, who am I missing? Utah, believe me, I don't forget you. Never do I forget you. Yes, and the physicality and the beatings that you put on teams. So, yeah, I mean, but look, 1-1, Washington State fell to Fresno State, but Oregon State beats down Florida. Just love seeing all of it. Oh, love it. Come on, SEC fans, hit me up on Twitter at Diablo00. I definitely want to hear, I really want to hear your excuses. And yes, Florida, you did beat Utah in the beginning of the season. You did. You completely destroyed Utah in the beginning of the season. And to me, it's funny because you toted that, and then when the season went off the rails, it's like, oh, well, yeah, but the Pac-12, we beat Utah. Yeah. If you played Utah right now, you probably would have got shut out. And that's no disrespect. As Oregon State, again, you kicked a field goal. You didn't go for it on 4th down, try and get a touchdown. You kicked a field goal and got smacked there. But nonetheless, again, with what Oregon State did this season, again, to finish 10-3 on the season for the Beavers, huge, absolutely huge. And I mean, the bowl win obviously puts the cherry on top of the season, but they already, not that they wanted to lose this game or they weren't focused on it, but the way they came back against Oregon, you're down 31-17 going in to the fourth quarter. And I mean, look, the madness about that, and again, it's still one of those things where, and you end up winning 38-34, but it's 31-17 and you outscore them 21-3, your rivals. And yes, you're at home again, and not obviously too far of a road trip, a little bit of a road trip, but obviously, not crazy far from Eugene to Corvallis. But the Ducks looking to win, get into the Pac-12 championship game, keep the Utes out, have a shot to beat USC, go to the college football playoff as well. And you put up 21 points. I mean, not that he didn't earn it before that, but that definitely got Jonathan Smith his contract extension and his pay raise, doubling his pay pretty much. And man, 38-34. So you win that. And it's, to me, again, 21-3 in the fourth quarter. Yes, every quarter counts. They probably shouldn't have gotten down. Shouldn't have gotten down that much, but nonetheless, they did. But yeah, I mean, Oregon State on the season, you beat Boise State, you beat Fresno State, Montana State, 17-14 loss to SC, the demolishing, like I said, they took 42-16 from Utah, but then you come back to beat a Stanford team who at the time was, again, competitive, still being competitive, but starting to struggle, 28-27. You handle Washington State 24-10, blow out Colorado 24-9, lose to Washington, again, 24-21 on a late field goal. Beat Cal, beat Arizona State, beat Oregon. So, again, they are a team that's not going nowhere. And yes, they're going to have a target on their back now. How do they respond to that? So that part I do get. But, well, that's going to do it for Pac-12 review. Again, UCLA headed to the Big Ten. California Board of Regents finally approved it. Oregon State beats up on Florida. Washington State falls to Fresno State 1-1 in bowl play. Going to get out of here. I'll be back on Friday with preview again, talking more bowl games. And yes, I will be back Friday. So again, hope everyone's having a happy holiday season. Obviously, college basketball in full swing. Some insane games. Shout out to the Bobby Hurley and the men's Sun Devils, 11-1, 9 in a row that this team has now won, and then they will start up conference play soon. So but hopefully everybody has a great holiday week. I'll see you on Friday. Enjoy some Monday Night Football tonight if you're going to enjoy it, and go from there. And like I say, I'll see you on Friday. And like I always say, forks up. See you tonight on the Sports Arena, 10 o'clock Eastern here on the Sideline Sports Network. But yes, forks up.